refused to let my son go to his girlfriend's funeral because I didn't approve of their relationship, but now he's left me everything including her memories. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and my son Jake, who's 22, has always been the center of my world. It's been just the two of us for a long time. His father left when Jake was 9, and I was the one who kept everything together. I worked my butt off to make sure he had everything he needed. I pushed him to get good grades and made sure he got into college. I was strict, yes, but I had to be. I wasn't about to let my only child throw his future away. Then he met this girl, Elena, when she was 18. She was in her senior year at the same high school, and came from what I can only describe as a broken home. Her mom jumped from job to job constantly. Her father wasn't in the picture. From the moment I met her, I had this gut feeling that she was going to drag my son down to her level. There was something about her I just didn't like. She'd show up at our house in ripped jeans, messy hair, and she'd call me Mrs. M like we were friends or something. I told my son from the beginning that I didn't approve, that she wasn't the type of girl he should get serious about at his age. But he didn't listen to me. They dated for over a year. He'd stay out late, skip family dinners, come home smelling of her perfume. I told him he was becoming someone I didn't even recognize. We fought almost every week. I even tried putting my foot down by telling him he wasn't allowed to see her under my roof. He called me controlling and said I didn't want him to be happy. That wasn't it. I saw my own mistakes in him. I got pregnant at 19 by a man who left before the ink dried on the birth certificate. I spent my whole life climbing out of that hole. I didn't want my son repeating history with a girl who had no future. Then the accident happened. It was a Sunday morning. Elena and her friends were driving home from some late-night concert and the driver fell asleep at the wheel. The car flipped, 3 girls went to the hospital, and Elena didn't make it. My son was at work when he got the call from one of her friends. For 3 days straight, he barely ate or slept. I tried to comfort him, but he wouldn't let me near him. He just sat in his room with photos of her, crying. I told him I understood he was sad, but that he couldn't let this destroy him. I told him he needed to move forward, focus on his future, not get stuck grieving over a girl who'd made all the wrong choices. Then he told me he wanted to go to the funeral. I said no. He lost it. He screamed at me that I had no heart, that she was everything to him, that he couldn't live with himself if he didn't say goodbye to her. I told him funerals are for family and that she wasn't his wife. He said she was more family than I'd ever been. I told him he wasn't allowed to go, that he could only go if he stayed home and worked on his college applications instead of wallowing in his grief. He stormed out, slammed the door, and I thought that was the end of it. The next morning, I woke up and his bed was empty. His phone was still charging on his desk, but the car keys were gone. For days, his friend said nothing when I asked. Later that same day, I saw photos on social media. He was there, dressed in a suit at her funeral. Something in me snapped and I felt betrayed, like my own son had disrespected me in public. When he came home that night, I was waiting for him. I told him to get out. I told him if he thought he was so grown, then he should go live like an adult. I said I was tired of him disrespecting me in my own house. He yelled that I was evil, but I didn't care and told him to pack his bags. He walked out the door without saying a word. I locked it behind him. That night, I packed up his clothes, his posters, his computer, everything. I donated most of it the next day. Some personal stuff I threw away. Letters, photos, memories of that girl. I didn't want them in my house. I told myself I was cleansing the house of bad energy, of the toxic influence that had poisoned my son against me. When neighbors and relatives asked, I told them my son had run away. I told them he'd packed his bags and left because he wanted to start fresh. I even told my sister he'd probably gone to stay with Elena's family. I figured that would make them stop asking. It worked. That was 9 weeks ago. Not one single word from him. No calls, no texts, nothing. His best friend texted me to tell me my son was safe, but wouldn't say where. I told him to tell my son I'd changed the locks. He didn't respond. I figured he'd come back at least when he realized how childish he'd been. I think I was right not to let him go to that funeral. That girl ruined him. If I hadn't intervened, he would have followed her straight into failure. But now I'm starting to wonder if I went too far. I did everything for that boy. I sacrificed every part of my life to raise him alone. I just wanted to prevent him from falling into the same trap I did. Everyone on the internet is calling me heartless. One of Elena's friends even posted something on Facebook saying she was glad my son got away from me. People are sending me messages calling me every name in the book. I don't think anyone understands how terrifying it is to watch your child fall apart over something you know isn't good for them. Maybe I was harsh, but I don't think I was wrong to try to protect him. Comments. I think I understand why your son's father left you. You're the worst excuse for a mother that could exist. You say you donated his stuff. What you did is actually known as theft. And then you tell him he can't go to the funeral because it's just for family? What kind of bubble do you live in? Funerals are for everyone who wants to say goodbye. Your ex might be a bad person for abandoning a child, but you're far worse. Congratulations. You've managed to beat a deadbeat dad in the race for worst parent. I can understand not liking your son's relationship with a girl. I think you had some weird possessive instinct and just wanted him all to yourself. But your son was devastated by losing someone he loved, and instead of letting him say goodbye, you prevented it and then threw out his belongings. If you'd let him go to say goodbye, it would have given him some closure. He'd never be able to see her again anyway. There's something I don't get. You complain about the deceased girl coming from a broken home, not having a father present, but your son also came from one. I don't know the reasons for your broken home, but in your son's case, you made sure of it. Maybe the father was also wrong, but you have to see all the circumstances. You seem to have family supporting you. Maybe Elena's mom didn't. Besides, I doubt you're as poor as you claim. I think it's more like you have low standards because you're so controlling. Update 1. I need to clarify some things because people, both online and in real life, are spreading lies about me. I've been accused of being abusive, of throwing my son out like garbage, of being some kind of monster. I know how that post sounded. I was angry when I wrote it. Maybe I didn't explain things clearly enough. Or maybe people read what they wanted to read, but I'm not letting them paint me as the villain here. My son could come back home. That's the part I can't sugarcoat. As much as I've tried, I have no idea where he is. Elena's mother came to my house 3 days ago. Apparently, he's been staying with her. She said he showed up the night after I told him to leave. She took him in because, according to her, no one deserves to be homeless after losing the person they love. I asked her how long she planned to keep him there, and she said, as long as he needs. I told this woman she was overstepping, that she was out of her lane, that she was manipulating him in his grief to fill the void her daughter left. She slapped me hard. I didn't return the slap, I'm not that kind of person. I told this crazy woman to leave before I called the cops. She left, but I didn't even let her take any of my son's things to bring to him. If he wanted them, he'd have to come get them himself. I tried calling him after that visit with my number, but as expected, he never answered. So I got someone else's phone to borrow so when I called it would show a different number. He answered after a few rings. I said, Jake, it's Mom. And there was silence, then he hung up. I know everyone will say I deserved it, but nobody understands what it's like to raise a child alone. To have everything you do scrutinized, and nothing you do appreciated. After my first post, someone from our town, God knows who, found it and shared screenshots on Facebook. Now everyone knows. People from my church, neighbors, co-workers, even Jake's old teachers. So many people, and the comments were cruel. I've been called abusive, narcissistic, heartless. My pastor told me I should take some time away from community events because this Sunday, during the service, people were whispering about me. Translation: everyone's gossiping and I'm the problem. Even my sister turned against me. She texted me that she saw the post and that I need professional help. I told her she'd always been soft when it came to drama and that she knew nothing about raising a child alone. She said, but I'm learning watching you has taught me what not to do. I've never been cruel for the sake of being cruel. Every rule, every boundary, came from love. I want to clarify that it's not like people think that I donated his stuff out of spite. That's not true. Yes, I got rid of some things that reminded me of Elena. Letters, photos, souvenirs. But I also donated a lot of his clothes to charity. I was doing something good, giving those clothes to people who might need them. My coworkers look at me differently now. One whispered that I donated my son instead of his clothes. I almost walked out that day. I've been praying every night for him to come home. Recently, through a mutual friend, I found out my son has been going to grief counseling with Elena's mother. That felt like a betrayal to me, because that woman wasn't right in the head, and seeing her counselor wasn't helping much. I sent him an email last night. I wrote it from the bottom of my heart. I told him I'm still his mother, that I'll always love him and that he belongs here at home. I told him I was willing to work things out with him and that she was using him. I wrote, "You're not her son, Jake. You're mine. What else do I do?" Comments. People are putting you at the center of this and pointing at you because you are the bad guy, and no one's making that up. People who need a push to learn their multiplication tables, you need a kick in the rear to realize that as a mother, you've been terrible. People aren't reading what they want to read, they're reading what you wrote. You're the one who doesn't understand what you're putting down, because you're too blind to see the kind of mother you are. If you wanted to protect him from being a young father, you should have taught him about using protection, not prevented him from seeing a girl. You're shameful, but for you, everything is difficult. Now he's without your supervision, and he can sleep with whoever he wants. See the bad in the situation? And for God's sake, the clothes thing, it's not something good like you think. Donating clothes you don't want is fine, to people who might need them. But you donated things your son still wanted. And his ex's belongings, those were also donated to people who needed them. I'd love to hear you justify that. You're accusing a person who passed away of not being right in the head, who can't defend herself. But so far, I only see one person who's not right in the head. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last post. If you're here for a redemption arc, you'll get that satisfaction soon enough. Yes, my son is gone completely, officially, permanently, as far as I can tell. He moved out of state in March. He's at some university across the country now. I only found out because my sister forwarded me a Christmas card from one of Elena's cousins, of all people. Apparently, he got accepted into a program there. Funny, because when I pushed him toward engineering scholarships, he told me I was crushing his creative spirit. Looks like he finally got the freedom he wanted, because he's studying something completely different from what I would have wanted for him. He changed his number, his email, everything. The only trace left is an old Facebook profile picture. One of him and Elena in a pumpkin patch. It's frozen there at 17, smiling like they had the whole world ahead of them. I keep saying him like he's a stranger, because that's how it feels now. A stranger I once raised. My reputation in town went to hell after the last update. I used to lead the women's auxiliary at our church. They removed me. People still smile when they see me at the grocery store. But those are pity smiles, if not mocking ones. Someone even wrote monster on my mailbox with a marker one morning. Still, I refused to paint myself as the villain. I was a mother doing what I thought was necessary. At the end of March, I went to the cemetery. I told people I was visiting my parents' graves, but that was a lie. I parked near the back, close to the section where they buried Elena. I waited until after dusk, when the groundskeepers had left. Her grave was covered with fresh flowers, lilies mostly, and some wildflowers, the kind she used to pick and braid into her hair when she'd come to our house. I stood there for a long time, watching the wind move them. Someone had left a disposable camera and a little note folded under a stone. I didn't have to open it to know it was from him. So I left a note written for him, so when he visited the grave again he could read my words. It was the only way to reach him. I didn't want to use a gravesite to leave him a message, but it was my only option. A few days later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was my son saying, "Mom, I got your note. Please just leave me alone. I'm doing better, in a way. Thanks to what you did, I was able to get away from your toxicity and all the bad that came with you." I tried reaching him on that number, but unfortunately, he doesn't respond. I don't think he will, but I was hopeful. I'm thinking about selling my house and moving somewhere new, starting over. I feel like this place is haunted, that there's nothing here for me, but I feel like it's the only thing I have left of him. If I leave, I feel like it's as if there's no possibility of fixing things with him. I feel like we'll drift apart completely. That might sound stupid, because we're already far enough apart, but that's all I can think about now. I've started therapy. The therapist asked me in the first session why I hated Elena so much. I told her I didn't hate her, I hated what she represented. She was the kind of girl who would ruin her life without looking at the consequences on both sides, the one who didn't worry about what came next. I used to be like that before I had my son. Before the responsibility. Before getting pregnant at 19 and having to bury every dream I had. Elena reminded me of the girl I was. Reckless, naive, full of hope. And I hated her for it. The therapist said it sounded like I wasn't trying to save my son from her. I was trying to save myself. I don't know what will become of my life at this point. I have nothing left to fight for. Before, I went to work thinking I was doing it for my son, but now I have nothing to fight for. Update 3. It's been a year. People told me to let the thread die, to swallow my shame and shut up. I'm writing this because there are things I need to say. Since my last update, I've made changes. I finally moved, there was nothing left for me in that town, only bad memories. It was difficult to do from a sentimental standpoint, but I had no other choice and I wanted to heal myself. There were only bad memories there. People who treated me as badly as you all do. The difference is that here it's in person. I knew those people. Here it's just anonymous people attacking me and I don't care about them. Shortly after moving, when I'd managed to settle in and found another job, I decided enough time had passed for the wounds to have healed. I thought my son would have gotten over his ex by now, and that he'd be more receptive to talking to me. Well, I haven't, so I've made the decision to stop trying. It's too painful to be rejected by your child over and over again. I think the healthiest thing for me right now is to accept that I no longer have a son. And I know you'll call me everything. Tell me I deserve it for being a bad mother. But if you were in my shoes and knew what I've suffered, I think you could at least have some sympathy for me. I didn't even know what university he was at, but I knew he was studying, and I literally spent a week on the internet calling different universities with those programs to get information. Luckily, his last name isn't that common, so it was easy to find out if he was studying there or not. I'd say things like I wanted to talk about my son's tuition because I wasn't sure if I'd paid the last month, and when they'd tell me there was no student enrolled with that name, I'd hang up. That's how I finally found out where he was. It wasn't easy, I don't know how many universities I had to call to find him. When I finally knew where he was, I took a weekend trip to the campus, which was quite far away, and for those asking, the tuition was paid. Then I spent 2 full days walking around the place, looking to see if I could find my son and at least give him a hug. But I never found him, which meant the trip and the money I invested were wasted. I could have stayed more days because I was between jobs at that moment, so I didn't have to go back. But someone must have reported me to campus security and they kicked me out. They said that according to what they'd been told, I'd been stalking the site for days. I tried to explain to them that I was just looking for my son, and that if they helped me, I'd probably leave shortly after talking to him. But they said that was considered harassment, and that if my son hadn't given me information about his dorm, then I had no right to be there. I came back later, thinking they wouldn't recognize me. But they did and called the police. In the end, they let me go without pressing charges if I left the city as soon as possible. That was like a punch to the gut for me, because it felt like fate didn't want me near my son. So I took note of that and now I'm working on letting him go. It feels like grief, like my son has died. But at the same time, not really, because I know he's alive and I just can't be near him. That's what hurts the most, and what will take me the longest to get over. However, at this moment, there's nothing I can do. I've accepted that I've lost him, and I'm living with that decision, even though it hurts. That's why I want to make this my final update, like the title says. Why would I come back here to read comments? Even the positive ones, because most of them used to be really bad to me. No one ever said I was the best mother in the world, but it's easy to criticize when you're not a single mother doing the best you can. I came to Reddit hoping to get some support, and found absolutely none of it. Comments. No, you're still the bad guy. You stalked your son when he doesn't want you near, and you still think you're not the bad guy and everyone's wrong except you. That's the saddest part, because when people discover they're wrong, they can work on improving the rest of their lives. Not you, you'll keep being a ridiculous person who's probably very lonely. Your son probably won't go to your funeral, probably won't care as much as he did about his ex. Do you have until your death to regret it? But each post is more disappointing, so I don't think you will. Post from the deceased girl's mother. I don't know how to start this, but I think my disbelief that a person could say the things she said about my deceased daughter is my starting point. I've been struggling with having lost my daughter, the only one I had. And for it to come from a person like that, who should understand because she's had a similar life to mine, I think is the most horrible thing. I want to talk to you about my daughter because I want you to see a different version of her. Not the version that woman wrote, based on all her biases. To start with, my daughter was a very strong girl, a teenager with a great group of friends who deeply loved her boyfriend. She was joyful, as I used to call her, because she liked to celebrate life. She knew we didn't have an easy life, having lost her father when she was very young, and not having a large support system of family. But we tried and we got through it. I always found it absurd that her boyfriend's mother couldn't empathize with that. And according to what this boy told me about his mother, she seemed to have an unhealthy relationship with him, something that was proven shortly after my daughter's death. When I read the comments on her posts, a large number were defending my daughter's boyfriend, my daughter, and putting that woman in her place. However, there were people who thought my daughter deserved to die the way she did, just because she went to a concert, that she'd probably been drinking, this or that. No, my daughter had the misfortune of an accident where the car she was in had a blowout, went off the road, flipped and killed my daughter and one of her friends. Only one of the 3 survived. She didn't even go to the funeral, which was a joint one. There were people paying their respects to my daughter and her friend when this person showed up and made a scene. I was hugging my daughter's boyfriend at the time, because he wasn't holding up very strong emotionally. We'd both lost someone very important in our lives, and we were supporting each other. But she didn't see it that way. She started screaming that first my daughter had tried to steal her son and now I was doing it. That I was trying to replace my daughter and the relationship. Which was insane, just thinking about it. But this woman had some kind of mental problem, because nothing she said made any sense. Fortunately, Some friends of her son and my daughter got her out of there and stayed until she left. Someone called the police, and then they watched as she drove away in her car. After that, her son stayed living with me, because he didn't want to go back to his mother. And I allowed it. I felt no child should return to a home where there's toxicity. I tried to go pick up some of her son's things from the house, but that went pretty badly. And then there were a couple of incidents when his mother came to my place looking for him, even with the police, and it was a real mess. The first time she came alone, and she was relatively calm. She was yelling and stuff, but compared to her second visit, it was civilized, so to speak. The second time she brought the police because, according to her son was a minor and should return to her house. We had a conversation with the police, where we tried, with her son, to explain what was happening and that he feared for his safety at home, which became evident when she started lunging at me and trying to hit me right in front of them. It all ended with the mother being taken away by the police, and a few days after that, I helped her son file a restraining order against her. Then her son moved out of state to attend university, and everything quieted down quite a bit. She was fired from her job and also from some places where she participated. Everyone started avoiding her, and that helped her stop bothering me. Until one day I discovered she'd vandalized my daughter's grave, writing with spray paint and disturbing some things that had been left there. We saw it on the cemetery cameras, so I filed a complaint against her. It didn't result in much, but at least now she has to pay for the repairs and a fine, plus do community service at the cemetery. I don't understand why she hated my daughter so much. The only explanation is that she felt a type of love for her son that isn't healthy. I've seen many things that make me think that, like her appearance at the funeral, but I never expected her to go that far. I think that's all I can tell. I just wanted to talk about my daughter and what she was really like. Update 1. Before commenting, I've read that the other woman has posted. Thanks for telling me in the comments on my post. I prefer not to comment on that. Just tell what's been happening from my perspective and her son's. No, he said he doesn't want to write anything. He knows about all these posts, but he won't do it. She moved out of town and I celebrated. I didn't throw a party, but I felt happy that she'd finally disappear from my life and toasted to that the night she did. She hadn't done anything recently, but after the incident I mentioned in my previous post, no one really wanted her around. Until she tracked her son down to the university. I don't know how she did it according to the way she wrote in her post. It seems like no one helped her. The problem is that she found him and traveled there. It was her son who saw her that day and notified campus security. She still had a restraining order against her, and she was violating it. That's why they also called the police. Even though she was released a few hours later since it was the first time she'd broken it, she came back the next day. That led to her arrest for 30 days, for violating the order a second time within hours. She didn't leave from there like she said she did, but she was gone for some days. After that she left the area, and we haven't heard from her in weeks. Nobody knows where she really moved to, just that she's gone. I don't know if she had any friends left in town after everything. I haven't spoken with her family either, but I don't think they want to talk about the subject anyway. Her son is safe, thanks for worrying about him. He knows that if his mother shows up again, she'll probably spend between 6 months and a year in jail. It would be third-degree stalking, which is quite serious in his state. If I'd known this would be so important, I would have written it sooner, but the order works nationwide and the consequences depend on where it's prosecuted. Final update. At the end of last month, I wrote about the woman who was stalking her son, and boy do I have something to tell you. Not long after my previous post, the woman returned to campus. She was stalking her son outside the dorms for about a week, waiting for him to come out during the day without being seen. This was recorded by security cameras at nearby businesses and shows the woman, despite the fact that she wasn't supposed to approach. When her son left campus, she waited only 2 blocks before jumping on him to hug him, but in a violent way. I don't know how to explain it, but she was clawing at his face while he tried to get her off him. Even the friends he was walking with joined in the effort to separate her. The police arrested her again, and after the evidence, the judge imposed 2 months in prison. It's like a horror movie that doesn't seem to end. In her post, she talked about how she'd leave her son in peace, but it was just a lie because she's been stalking him. It was like a farewell letter, like she knew what she was going to do, what was going to happen. I just hope I don't have to come back at the end of 2026 to write about something worse.